Hello everyone, we Group 12. In my presentation, I'm going to explain economic impacts of COVID. I'll start with some general information on what is COVID-19. COVID-19 is contagious disease caused by the most recently discovered coronavirus. Where did COVID-19 originate from? The root cause of the virus is likely the spread of the virus from an animal medium to the people in the first city where the COVID-19 outbreak occurred. In Wuhan, China, the epidemic started in late December, started spreading around the world in January 2020. The impact of COVID on firms and industry in UK. The pandemic has affected on industry, but it had a bigger impact on some firms and sectors than on others. The risk of infection from different activity, the ability of business to operate remotely, and the policies to contain the spread of the virus have each played a role. These have all affected current business and expectations about the future.
Expected impact of COVID-19 on sales and employment from 2020 Quarter 2 to 2021 Quarter 1 by industry. It presents the estimated impact on sales and employment over the first year of the pandemic from the DMP survey. Firms in all sectors reported a large reduction in sales, which was close to 60% in recreational services. Other sectors reporting a large reduction were accommodation and food, administration and support, and transport and storage. The smallest effects were expected in other production, agriculture, mining, and quarrying, and utilities, and information and communications, all of which are less likely to be affected by lockdowns and other restrictions. The impact of COVID-19 on employment in 2021 Quarter 2 and labor productivity. This shows that the firms and industries that are expecting the largest negative impact on employment also have relatively lower productivity. Productivity, a measure of how much each worker in a firm or industry produces, can vary for many reasons, but tend to be lower in more labor-intensive industries, such as accommodation and food, recreational services, and wholesale and retail. Impact of COVID-19 on employees. Businesses have laid off some workers and used the CJRS to furlough others. Firms in the DMP survey reported furloughing around a fifth of their employees over the past year on average. These workers were still employed but not required to work any hours. The extent of furloughing has varied significantly across industries. How many employees a company chooses to furlough is linked to their expectations of the impact on sales and employment. Businesses in accommodation and food and recreational services reported having furloughed the largest proportion of their workforce.
disruption to non-labor inputs from COVID-19 in 2020 Q2, and expected impact of COVID-19 on sales in 2020 Q2 by industry. Apart from falling demand, firms have also reduced output because they are unable to obtain crucial inputs or supplies. Around 40% of firms in the DMP survey reported some disruption to their supply chains during the second quarter of 2020. Supply disruption was reported to be higher in industry and firms that expected larger sales impacts, figure 4, implying that supply effect could have been affected and held back output too, and more so in some sectors than others. Uncertainty around year-ahead sales growth. Uncertainty around expected sales growth over the next year jumped in the second quarter of 2020. Since then, it has remained elevated, although it has begun to fall back from its peak. Uncertainty around year-ahead sales growth by industry. This uncertainty was larger for firms in recreational service, accommodation and food, construction and transport, and storage, the sector most affected by the pandemic. And while still high, there was a relatively smaller increase in uncertainty for firms in industries such as auto service, health production, agriculture, mining and quarrying, and utility. Later conclusion. Overall, the sector and business that have been most affected by lockdowns or other social restrictions have also suffered the most in terms of loss of sales and impacts on staff. It is also this industry, principally those related to food, travel, and leisure, which have faced significant future uncertainty.